Hi guys, welcome back to Kpop Talks. Why are these videos late? Because while I was editing, the audio got fucked for whatever reason. I don't know why, and so I lost everything in terms of the recordings that I did, not only for this but also for the other videos, because I was simultaneously editing them all, so I have to re-record them. That's the reality of this situation. So we are here with the worst albums of 2024. Looking back on the year, I think it was, in terms of projects, a pretty solid year throughout. But when I look at the worst albums of 2024, one thing that stands out for me is, as a general rule, is that there were a lot of groups that probably came out of good years that maybe released a lot of projects. Some of them weren't particularly good. Some anticipated comebacks after a long time were really disappointing. Certain groups that aren't in terms always very consistent released some of their worst projects probably ever, and there's a few of solo artists that I think their solo endeavors have been, if not disappointing, it's just really terrible throughout their careers, their short careers at least. So this is a list that includes all the albums that I've listened to this year that I didn't like. Let's start with some honorable mentions, which I think are like 10 albums in here. We have BO Affection, TXT Minisode3 TOMORROW, QWER with MANITO, PLAVE, ASterum 1341, LESSERAFIM with Easy, LIMELIGHT Last Dance the remix version, because that album is fucking garbage honestly, ATEEZ Stunning, ELAST Everlasting, ARC with ARC, YUQI with Sweet Tape, and Solar with Colors. Like, these are some of the projects that didn't make the list that I still didn't think were good, and I think deserves to be mentioned. And go listen to them, maybe you will enjoy them more than I did. And as always, the first 10 from number 20 to number 11, we're gonna kind of like go past them quite fast. I'm gonna list them, maybe say a couple of words for all of them, and then move on. At number 20, we have Card with Word to Now Part 1, Yellow Light. I was very disappointed. I felt that for Card comeback, songs didn't hit as hard as they normally did, and I felt like, they probably had to rush this project out as soon as they had a chance to work with the members in a moment, so they kind of put 4 or 5 songs together and moved on. I don't like the songs, I don't like the productions of them. I felt they kind of miss something, and they don't go as hard as previous Card songs, At number 13, we have DXMON with HYPERSPACE. Even though I liked one of their songs, I thought it was solid. I think for the rest of the project, it's just not it. I think too much stuff going on. It doesn't really take you to one direction and make you like, look, this is what we're good at. And so because you're taking me in a lot of different directions, you're not really excelling in any of them. Can't really get into the album as much as I would like. Number 18, we have Lunate with Buff. Lunate is a group that I think, again, they're relatively new, so it's not like I'm necessarily hating on them, but for a project, it's just very bland, and I think you need to stand out specifically now for girl groups, considering how, hard the competition is right now. There's so many great girl groups producing music, from new to classic groups, so you kind of have to up your tempo and I think also your quality of music, unfortunately. Number 17, we have 17 with Spill the Field. This might be the worst project 17 has ever released. I feel like, again, it's just not good. I mean, it's a batch of songs that feel like they were throwaways put on an album to sell more, And 17 has had this kind of like, recently they've been doing this more, which is very weird for me to think. But yeah, I mean, this has been probably their worst project ever, I think. It's very uninspired. Some of the worst, like, I think just in general, like, concepts they went for, and it was a very weird thing for me to hear from them, considering I think 17 is a fantastic group overall. Number 16, with IU with The Winning. I just think IU, her music, it's not very important for her anymore, so you kind of see it on this album. She's such a big brand that music is just at this point the tertiary thought for her. Number 15, we have CNBLUE with X. I mean, this has been a pretty disappointing album. I was never a huge fan of CNBLUE, but this album just feels outdated, old, completely out of place. It just feels like we need to come back because it's our 10th album, but you actually don't have to come back if you don't have anything really good to drop, Number 14, we have ATEEZ Golden Hour Part 2. I was quite disappointed by this. I felt like ATEEZ was really not a decent run, but yeah, this one was just, I think, in general, a bust of a project. Normally ATEEZ has these thing where they tend to drop multiple projects throughout the year, even if they're shorter. And sometimes when I'm happening with albums like this, is that it's clearly just songs that they thought they were fine, they could do well maybe in charts and whatever, and so they tend to drop them. But I think in the process of doing that, it just ends up being an album that just doesn't work. So I think all of these albums doesn't work front to back. And again, it's not necessarily the worst thing I've ever heard, but from a disappointment standpoint, I'm really disappointed. This is very weird considering they were coming, I think, from a very good run from an album standpoint, even though I'm not the biggest ATEEZ fan, you know. Number 13, with BM with Element. Yeah, this album is just not good. I think the worst thing about this album is the production, really. I felt like the production wasn't there at all. It didn't fit BM at all. And worse and worse, I think BM also, it just wasn't there, I think, vocally. Like, he wasn't focused. He didn't feel like this music he was really focused on compared to his previous work, you know. So, yeah, unfortunately, this was a dud, I think, through and through. Number 12, your Rose with Rosie. The problem is that with these songs individually, they're not even that bad, but on a project they just end up creating the most basic bitch project ever, and it's the most neutral, uninspiring music you can hear. And I think the problem for me is that Rose has a very specific style of making music. That's why songs like APT I really like, because I think they really showcase her better parts. But but then you have so many other songs which trying to cover so many genres that are clearly not her thing. It's clearly not what she is, and we're still trying to push that out of her. That just doesn't make any sense. Weirdly enough, they do that with Lisa. Well, they do that with Jenny. Whether I like their music or not, they understand what they are. But with Rose, they're trying to make her do a million different things, and I don't really get why they're doing that. Number 11, DPR IAN, Saint. I mean, this is a pretty good. This is a pretty bad project, my bad. For Ian himself, I feel like his label mates or his crewmates have had a great year, really, and you'll see it in my other video about the best albums. But he really had, I think, a terrible year again, and it's been a 2-3 year where I think he's been on a run where he just makes this music that I just don't think it's as edgy as he thinks. Really, it's not as interesting, it's not as emo as he thinks, so it's end up being very just boring and uninteresting pop music in many ways. We get into the top 10. This one I'm gonna a little bit deeper on what I think about these groups as well, and why I had them higher compared to the albums below. At number 10, we start with TXT, the Star Chapter Century. Listen, I think TXT had a great style at one point. They really discovered their aesthetic during the runaway period. They really were doing something very unique in the industry. And then Hype decided to send them to mainstream hell. They started having pop punk, punk rock, pop punk. They started having them do very weird like features with artists that have nothing to do with them. They've sold themselves artistically, not only from a production standpoint, from a vocal standpoint. They don't have that uniqueness anymore, and so I think they still lose a lot of their power when they don't have that. And so when I listen to an album like this, I kind of feel that for most of the project, maybe 1 or 2 songs, maybe one, I think really I thought it's fine. The rest is just not TXT for me. And I understand that for their boy groups, they're going towards a direction. You can see with Jimin, Jungkook, and then let's say the top groups, obviously. So TXT, 17, right? They're going towards a very specific direction. But I think that's actually hurting them more than anything, because these groups all have a very unique style, and the idea that you should all uniform them from, in a way, I just don't really understand why you would do that. Really, I really don't get that. Number 9, I have KATSEYE with SIS, Soft is Strong. I think this is just in general an album that it doesn't make any sense for me. Like, I understand KATSEYE is supposed to be more of a mainstream Western project, but I just feel like another K-pop group that's trying to do a million different things as well. They want to be Western pop, they want to be K-pop, they want to be singing in English, but they constantly do like reference stuff that is from Korea as well. Like, it's a very weird way, the way they've, I think, set them up, and I don't think they've been doing them any favor at all, you know. So yeah, I think they're a relatively new group, so they always have time to improve. But for now, I'm really disappointed about them, and I think overall you can look at the fact that, compared to a lot of their peers, they're quite behind, I would say, because a lot of these other groups that I really enjoy, which will be on my list at a higher level, in the top 20s or whatever of my best albums, like, a lot of these groups have not been around for like 5 years, been around for 2 years, maybe 3, and they're really good, you know, and they were really good year one. I have groups that have been here for a year and a half and they're in my top 10, top 15. So I think that for them, if they came out in 2019, they would have been much more appreciated because the field was much smaller. But now they stand out as a negative, I think, overall. I still would have not liked them in the past, but now I think it's much more obvious that they're just not good enough, I think. Number 8, YUQI with YUQI. This was just a complete failure, I think. I think knowing who YUQI is, seeing her personality, why trying to make her into an edgelord? I didn't really understand that at all. And so this is another thing, misprofilization of Gidle and their members. I think once you have them really understand who they are, you kind of have to go towards that direction and really be hard on it. I think it's very weird for me that for one reason or another, they've kind of missed on everyone, really, in that aspect, and they've kept missing for the most part. So it's a problem they used to have even with their previous groups, with, you know, B2B and what's their name, A-Pink as well. Used to the same problem, really, but like this, I think has been one of the most egregious ones I can think in recent memory, right? Like, you completely misprofile who YUQI is, and I think the music doesn't represent who she is at all. And then end up on top of that you make bad music. It's a bad combo, I think. Then at number 7, we have DKB with Urban Ride. I think it's time for them to just move on. I just don't think they have a lot of future in this industry, keeping going this way. Their company fumbled Brave Girls. They fumbled so many opportunities to keep success coming towards themselves, and they weren't able to do it. So I think at this point for them specifically, it's important to move on. Their music is just not good anymore, and even the interest that you had until like 2-3 years ago towards them has disappeared. So it is what it is. Number 6, we have Jimin with Muse. I don't know why they keep putting all of those effects on his voice. It's really the weird part for me, more than everything else. And also, again, production-wise, it's not interesting. Like I said, they suffer from the same issue of 17, and then another member is going to be in this group on this list as well. They're all trying to make them sound the same because they don't produce their own music. So they're probably using the same producers or the same people in the same camps. So it ends up like sounding that way. So yeah, that's really why I don't like this, honestly, about Jimin, and therefore I'm more like, I wish he did something a little bit more simple, something similar to V. I think it would be much better, but it's probably not going to happen, at least in the next 3 or 4 years, really. I think it's pretty impossible. We get into the top 5, we have SEVENUS with Spring Canvas. I just think this is a complete miss from SEVENUS. I remember hearing some like teasers early on. I thought it might not be bad. Then when you hear the project, you're kind of like, it just doesn't work at all. So it's a hot mess from to back, and vocally they're pretty bad. They're one of the worst groups I've heard vocally in sometimes, as far as I remember. So they were really, really disappointing, and it's hard for a group like this, after an album like this, to really get more fans and get people involved into the stuff you're making. It gets harder and harder and harder with time. Number 4, we have Jin with Happy. I mean, this was a disaster, I think. Jin was never good really at anything. He was always serviceable. So when you then end up putting him on a solo project, you can see all the flaws coming up and really showcasing themselves. Vocally is not that good. Lyrically, he obviously doesn't add much to his tracks, and so he doesn't have charisma, doesn't have presence. So he's just kind of useless as a solo artist, but he's gonna sell a lot of albums to Hype. He's gonna make a lot of money. So at the end of the day, that's what he cares about. At the end of the day. At number 3, we have YUQI with Why Is Me Complex. This was such a bad album. I didn't expect that originally when I heard it the first time. I thought it's gonna be much better. I questioned some of his decisions originally when he went to I remember that TV show we went to, like that survival show as a soloist. I was very confused because Pentagon is a successful group and stuff like that. I even remember him releasing a decent single, and then he releases his album, and I'm like, it's just not possible. The productions are bad, and who is a good producer? The lyrics are terrible, but his voice specifically didn't sound good at all. So either this project was rushed, either they couldn't really hide his flaws vocally with mixing and effects and stuff like that. But it was a bad project. The choruses suck. The songs aren't even catchy. So I was really disappointed. And I'm gonna put it number 3 because we compared to some of these guys that I mentioned, he's actually good. So I don't know what went wrong on this album. So he deserves to get punished. Let's say in my list to be in top 3. Number 2 we have XIN with The Real. Again, similar to DKB for me. I mean, they're having success though. Their numbers are very good. I've seen on YouTube and Spotify they're not doing bad. But they're so boring. Like everything they do to me just boring at this point. They don't really add anything of interest for me. And on top of not adding anything of interest, they are also not that good in anything. They tend to just be mediocre at everything. Therefore, they have no real qualities. And as I said before, the industry is full of incredibly good girl groups. So you end up standing out in a very negative way, much more than you did before. So XIN is one of the worst groups in the world. And again, they suffer still of that terrible thing, which is they're trying to be like Blackpink. And they're failing in every single way. And at number 1, we have Gidle with 2. Now, this is by far the worst album of the year. For pretentiousness, for concepts, for delivery, for production, for the tracklist itself. I think for the continuity of this group of being bad, because this is not the first time. This has been years of them being this bad, and for the longest people were hiding behind numbers. They were hiding behind the over popularity of Gidle in 2019, 2020. But when I used to say even my past videos, which are not on this channel anymore, I ended up canceling them for whatever reason. I don't even remember why I did that really. But when I look at this group, I think to myself, Soyeon is ruining this group in every single way. Vocally, musically. She's not able to say anything interesting in songs. Everything about her feels fake, manufactured. I remember watching the episode of I Live Alone, and even her daily life looked fake. Nothing about her screams honesty. And so I tend to think that that's to also showcase in the music, because when you're trying to make songs, they're supposed to have meaning, and they don't have meaning. That's what you get. An album full of half-baked songs that production-wise don't say much. They try to shock you with pace change, like complete change of like music style and everything, and then they tend to be worse. Wife is one of the worst songs of the year as well. So I mean, what more can you say about a group like this, right? Which everybody else hasn't said. So for me, it comes more from a place of not only disappointment, but again of rage. They've been like this for years at this point. So look, it looks like I have my glasses are all fucked up. So that's how I feel about Gidle, pretty much, and that's how I think most people feel about them now. They don't come off as interesting or even redeemable in any sort of single way, and they have good members in the group in terms of singing and obviously and presence and charisma. But as long as Soyeon is going to produce them, I don't see them going anywhere. And this was it for the worst albums of 2024. Again, the theme is kind of the same, which is very generic albums with some really big duds, I think, from groups that I didn't expect that compared to the previous years. And then obviously you go into the heavy hitters who have been bad for a long time. I think someone like Jimin should have been much better than what he is, but this is his second year of releasing bad music. I mean, not really, like a year and a half, let's say. Jin, I mean, he comes back from the military, he does shit music, he deserves to be high on the list, etc, etc. So, you know, it's obviously not hate, we're just reviewing the music and what I think about the groups as such. But obviously you wish all of them have success, but unfortunately for a lot of these groups it's gonna be hard, considering it's been years of them being irrelevant musically and obviously numerically as well. So let me know, guys, what you think in the comments. Leave a like, comment, share, subscribe, and see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.